Folks, welcome back to another edition of the Play Action Pod. I'm your host, Christian McCullum, and we're basically in March now. So March Madness will be here soon enough, and we continue to take you inside the top programs in the country. Today we have a special guest, Tony Gerdeman from BuckeyeScoop.com. Does a great job covering all things Ohio State over at BuckeyeScoop. Tony, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so, interesting season for Ohio State. So far, hoops. Last year the tournament kind of didn't, pan out the way anyone would have hoped, any Buckeye fans would have hoped. But coming into this year, what was the outlook? What was the feeling coming into this season?
I think the feeling this year was that they were going to have to find some scoring in the backcourt to replace Dwayne Washington, and that has gradually come along. Also that this was going to be E.J. Liddell's team, and it basically would go as far as he would take it, knowing that it's hard for a 3 or a 4 to carry your team without somebody to get them the ball. So that was also, you didn't know exactly how Jamari Wheeler would do, how he would fit in, because a lot was heaped upon him transferring over from Penn State as a point guard. So, like a lot of years at Ohio State, cautious optimism, but you can see the issues from pretty far away, and it's always a question of whether or not those issues can be patched up or hidden by Chris Holtmann.
You mentioned Liddell. I mean, yeah, it's definitely his team. He's had a phenomenal season. For people who haven't had a chance to watch much of him, what makes him so special?
He's about 6'6", 6'7", 230, 240 pounds, and he can shoot from the outside, but he's more a post guy, mid-range dynamo where he can be in the post and just turn around without putting the ball on the floor and knock down 75% of his turnarounds in the paint or from the elbow. And he's a really difficult matchup. Sometimes he'll play the 5, in which case big guys will have to come out on him, and he can do some things that make life difficult for them. He's a hard worker. He's a really, really good help defender. Like I said, he's only probably 6'6", but he's, I think, at the tops of the Big Ten in blocks because he can get up. He gets up higher on defense than he does on offense, and three-point shot is still coming around. He's probably around, I think 38, 39, 40%, somewhere like that, and can get hot, can also get cold like a lot of shooters. But, he's right around 20 points a game all season long, has had some bigger games, and, has had sometimes against Maryland, for instance, he kind of disappeared for a little bit or just struggled to find his shot and would sometimes force some stuff. But overall, certainly one of the Big Ten's top 6, 7 players.
Yeah, and the Big Ten's loaded with elite talent this year as well, so that's saying a lot. So, where do you think Ohio State is now? I mean, obviously they came up with maybe their biggest win of the season at the time, and maybe Wisconsin's the biggest win, but they just beat Illinois, and then they come back and probably get their worst loss of the season against Maryland. Where do you think? Do you think this team's going to be able to find some consistency?
Yeah, I don't know, because you saw exactly what this Ohio State team is capable of all in 1 week. They can beat really good teams on the road like Illinois, and they can lose to a Maryland on the road who is under 500 in Big Ten play. But, Maryland does have some talent. But this is an Ohio State team that also beat Duke earlier in the year. Now I think they're getting towards their best version of themselves. It's just they've played a lot of games in a small amount of time because they've had to play some replacement games that were postponed and got rescheduled. So they're playing games like every 2-3 days, and they're not getting a lot of breaks in doing that. But and then they'll finally get done with the regular season and then have to play day after day after day in the Big Ten tournament, depending on how far they go. So I think to answer your question, they're as good as they've been because now E.J. Liddell has help from Malachi Branham, and Kyle Young he's scoring off the bench, and the backcourt is coming around. I think Chris Holtmann knows exactly who they have now, and you've seen that with the lineups where guys aren't playing as much as they used to because they've not been helping as much, and other guys who haven't been playing as much, like Cedric Russell, is becoming more of a key component in the backcourt. So this is a team that has had weeks off at times, a couple times this year where they've not been able to play because of COVID. So they've had to kind of just really try to catch up from everything they've missed, and then also not get overwhelmed with all of the work, and then also come into their own and be their best version of themselves at the right spot.
So what will you want to see these next couple games and then in the Big Ten tournament to kind of get a feel of, all right, they're really hitting their stride or they're playing their best game as we head into March Madness?
They finish out at home 3 games. They should be favored in all of them. So they should, I don't want to say, double figure wins, but they should be in control of these last few games to show that they are who they want to tell people they are, who they think who they believe they are. It's one thing you can lose on the road in the Big Ten. That happens. I don't get too broken up about that. But you should be able to defend your home court going into the final stretch of the season where you need to be at your best. And the first place is almost no longer in the picture for them in the Big Ten. But you also don't want to fall back to where now you are out of you're missing some bye weeks or some bye games in the tournament. So they still have to be very, very just consistent, solid, be more careful with the ball. I'd like to see more ball movement out of them, frankly, because they've kind of turned into a one-on-one team where you get the ball to E.J. Liddell or you give the ball to Malachi Branham and see what they can do with it. And it's worked, but also at times you just got guys standing around and watching, and they don't shoot well enough when they get the ball out of, say, a double team or kick it out from the post. They don't really shoot the ball well enough at times to justify so much one-on-one, especially when guys like Liddell and Branham have struggled from the field like they did against Maryland.
Obviously, in conference play, these teams all know each other so well that anything can happen. But looking forward to the NCAA tournament, what's kind of like a generic matchup that you think could cause Ohio State the most trouble, or what kind of matchup would favor them?
Size gives Ohio State some issues, and they got away with it. They overcame that against Illinois, getting Kofi Cockburn in foul trouble. The Purdue size, matched with Purdue's athleticism in the paint as well, gives Ohio State some difficulty because E.J. Liddell likes to score in the paint, but if there's somebody as athletic and taller than him, that can give him some issues unless that guy, they can get him into foul trouble. A good big can get OSU's Zedke, the Ohio State starting center, in foul trouble. So I think size, but then you saw against Maryland, sometimes I think a hot point guard is, can get everybody in trouble, and that's what happened against Maryland. So you just never know when that's going to happen. But I think just the athletic size in the paint is where Ohio State doesn't want to see when the matchups come down. They don't want to see like a 6'9", top 20 pick in the NFL and in the NBA draft waiting for them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Tony, we really appreciate it. We'll be following all your coverage at BuckeyeScoop.com. Make sure you go over there, Ohio State fans, to get all your Ohio State news. Tony, we appreciate it, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.